Hi, I wanted to create a quick video for you all just demonstrating what your co-treating options would be inside of the CentralReach platform. So this video will specifically focus on workflows for speech, OT, PT, and ABA, all being able to share and have access to different documents, as well as the ability to write your SOAP notes at the end of a session and have that data stored on the platform. So what you're seeing on the screen in front of you is what we call a learning tree, and that's just our lingo for a client binder. So essentially every client that you're working with would have their own binder. And in this example, Kimberly, who's our client, she is receiving speech, OT, PT, and ABA. So what we've done is we've combined all of those disciplines into one client binder. Now, really, the purpose of doing that is just for visibility so that every provider working with Kimberly has access to other providers, programs, and data, and essentially can kind of check in and see how things are going with the other services Kimberly's receiving. So if you look over here on the left-hand side, here I've got my speech and language goals. I've also got my OT goals, my PT goals, and my ABA goals. So if I'm a speech provider, I can come in, click into my goals here. You can see I've got two different domains I'm working with Kimberly. And so if I'm just opening up these long-term and short-term goals, we see that Kimberly's working on the command wait. And so when I click into one of these goals, what's opening up is the data that has been taken during sessions with Kimberly. Now, I'll show you in just a minute how this data got here. But let's say that Kimberly has been receiving speech for a while, and now she's starting ABA. So if I'm an ABA provider, I come in and see what goals Kimberly is working on. And I notice that following the command wait is something she's been doing in speech. So if I go down here to my ABA goals, you also see that I'm working on following the command wait. Now, obviously, Kimberly hasn't been working with ABA as long as she has with speech, so not as much data on the screen. But here it's pretty easy for me to see, are we getting similar results in ABA that they are getting in speech? And if we're not, this is a good chance for me to contact the speech therapist and say, hey, can we chat about what's going on? I'd love to know how you're approaching this target and what Kimberly's doing for you. Now, another thing that you'll see here is this 1 next to this target in this ABA goal. So what this means is someone's left me a message. So if I'm the ABA provider and I come into the binder, if I click open that goal and go over here to the right-hand side where I see that 1 next to comments, this is an internal messaging system. So this is another tool that you can use to communicate between providers for a client. So see here, it looks like the speech therapist has left the ABA provider a message that says, hey, I'd love to talk about how manding for preferred items is working for you. Maybe that they're going to start working on that in speech, or they've already been working on that. So it's a nice way for us to communicate back and forth without having to run down the hall or send a text message or put a sticky note on the door. I've done that before. It's another way that co-treating can be made a little simpler and easier just by being able to pop in and leave someone else a message. Now, I've also got an Arctic practice video here. This is another capability that you have within the CentralReach platform, is you can store videos here that can be shared with parents through our parent portal. So if you find something great online, or you want to make a kind of video model for parents and share that with them, maybe they're practicing some things at home, this is another feature that can be utilized. I just wanted to accent that while we're here. Now, I've also got my OT goals here, so I can open those up. And maybe Kimberly has been in OT for a while and she's just starting PT. So I want to check in as her physical therapist, just see how she's been doing in her OT goals, and maybe want to parallel that to some of the goals I might be working on in PT. So essentially, every provider that's seeing Kimberly would have access to this binder and could view and see the data from all the different disciplines, and again, be able to leave messages for those if we want to circle up and maybe talk about or brainstorm how some of these programs are going. Now, another option that you have within the system is being able to write your SOAP note. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my calendar. So I'm a provider. And you'll see here, I have an appointment for Kimberly scheduled on Wednesday morning. So once Kimberly has come in, we've done our speech session. All I need to do is pop open that appointment. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Now, what you're seeing here at the top is all the information that will pertain to billing with this appointment. So the time that I work, the service code that it's tied to. But at the bottom of this page, this is where my SOAP note template is tied. So inside of CentralReach, you have the ability to create your own note templates. You can make them look however you want to. Yours will probably look very different than mine does. The system will pull in information about your client for you. And then I've just got some text boxes here to type in information. Now, when it comes to my data, if I just ran a speech therapy session with Kimberly and I took some plus and minus data as we were working on her goals, I can come to this section of my SOAP note, click on it. And you'll see here, Kimberly's goals are the first thing that pop up. So if I click on Kimberly's name, these are all of the goals that are active for her right now. So let's just say in session today, we worked on these 3 goals. So I'm just going to select those. And then it's going to give me the ability to type in the data that I took. So if I just made some notes as I was working on these goals, I can simply type in what that data was. And maybe this one was 45%. And then when I hit continue, it's going to go ahead and populate the goal and the data onto my SOAP note. Now, the other thing that's happened here is not only is the data on my SOAP note, but the data has been added into Kimberly's binder and put on that graph. That way, the data is now obviously accessible by other team members, but also reportable. So when it comes time to write Kimberly's progress report, I can pull all of that data into a report. Now, I know for speech and OT and PT, we don't typically report with graphs. So just keep in mind that your reports can be set up to not just pull the data as a graph, but you could also pull it as a percentage or an average or last 3 data points, last 3 visits. However you want to report that data, you've got lots of options. So just because the data is stored as a graph doesn't mean that's the way you have to report it. But this does make writing your SOAP notes a little simpler and faster, just being able to have the goal and the data populate. And then obviously, if you wanted to add some extra notes here, you can. Our SOAP notes also have the ability to get signatures. So whether you need, maybe if you're working with SLPAs or CODAs and they need supervisor signatures, you can build those lines in. If you needed a parent signature, you could build those in as well. Now, one more thing that I think is helpful as far as co-treating goes is you also have access to other providers' notes. And so what I'm going to do now is go into a client profile page. So every client that's in the system will have their own page. So here is our client Rowan, and you'll see here I can see files that have been uploaded to his particular page. I can see some of his health and vital information. I can see his active authorizations. But this one module here at the top called Notes and Forms, this is the part of the platform where you're going to be able to create those note templates. So whether it's a SOAP note template or an assessment template or a progress report template, whatever you need to create, you can. But you also can see any reports that have been written for him. So on the co-treating side, this is where I find this really helpful, where maybe Rowan has been receiving speech and he's going to start receiving ABA. So as his ABA provider, I'd love to see what his speech assessment looked like. So I can just go up here. I'm just typing in the word speech and you'll see he has an initial eval stored on his platform. Whoops, let me go back. Let me go into his profile one more time. So I can see he's got a initial eval stored here. So as his ABA provider, I can go in and preview that file and read through his assessment report from speech. And the more information I have, the better. So I'd love to see what was identified as issues then, maybe compare it to the treatment plan I have now. And that would be true for any files that are stored on Rowan's page. As a provider connected to him, and you'll see here, Rowan's got a lot of files, but I could certainly search for something that I needed. So maybe as an OT provider, I'd love to see his last PT progress report. I could search for that file and pull it up and be able to kind of compare and contrast how he's doing in one service versus another. So just one more tool that makes co-treating a little easier. As always, if you have other questions, we love to jump on and answer them live or answer questions via email, but hopefully this has been helpful as far as different ways that co-treating can happen within the CentralReach platform.